The small cracked thing you keep trying to hide is the very place the light was always going to get out. I've been listening to you hold your breath in the dark, waiting for a sound big enough to prove you are not standing alone against all of it. A trumpet, a rescue, a voice from somewhere that finally answers back. Stay close as I speak. Before this message ends, I want to show you why the sound you have been straining to hear from far away has been resting in your own tired hands the whole time. I see you in the moment, just before you speak, when you decide the room is already too full of louder, surer voices for yours to matter, and you swallow it back down. I see you outnumbered, not by people, always, but by the noise inside your own chest, the crowd of reasons you will not be enough for what is in front of you. I hear the prayer that has gone thin in your mouth, worn down to almost nothing, because a part of you decided that a small sound could not carry far enough to be worth making. You have been waiting for something enormous, and I have been holding something small and true and nearer to you than the fear. Let me name what no one around you has been close enough to notice. There is a place in you that has quietly settled on a verdict that you are the wrong size for your own life. Too few, too little. One pair of hands where a whole army would be needed. You look at the size of what stands against you, the worry that will not lift, the habit that will not break, a door that will not open, a grief that will not thin. Then you look at what you have to meet it with, and the arithmetic frightens you. So you brace. You gather yourself into a smaller and smaller shape, and you wait for reinforcements that never seem to crest the hill. There is a jar in you that you have carried very carefully for a long while. You know the crack is there. You have felt it since it happened. A season that split you down the middle. A loss that left a hairline fracture running through you. The failure you were sure had ruined the whole vessel. And ever since, you have spent an enormous share of your strength simply keeping the jar turned so no one sees the break, holding it together, showing the whole side to the room. It is exhausting work, this holding, and you have called it dignity. I have watched it cost you more than the crack ever did. The one of you who leads has learned to look unshakable in front of everyone who leans on you, while a voice underneath asks whether you have anything left to lead with. The one of you who stays quiet, in the meeting, in the family, in the pew, has a true thing to say, and keeps deciding your voice is too thin to change the shape of anything. The young one among you feels outmatched by a world built for the loud and the certain. The older one among you has begun to wonder whether your part in the story has already been played, whether the trumpet sounds now only for others. Different rooms, the same held breath, the same waiting for a sound that does not come. It shows up in the smallest moments, which is why it wounds so quietly. The message you typed out honestly and then deleted, because who were you to say it? The hand that stayed down when they asked if anyone had a question, though the question was burning a hole in you. The song you only sing when the car windows are up and no one can hear how thin the voice has gotten. The good idea you handed to someone louder because you were sure it would land better coming from them. None of these are disasters. That is exactly why they teach so well. They are small enough to feel foolish naming out loud, and steady enough to slowly convince a person that the world has already sized them up and turned towards someone with more to offer. Underneath all of it is one fear with a very simple shape. That you are not enough to win the thing you are facing, not strong enough, not many enough, not whole enough. That if it came down to your strength against the size of the trouble would win. Because it always looked like the larger army, I want to answer that fear directly, because it has been steering more of your days than you know. It is true that you are not enough to win it by your own strength. And it was never once going, hear this gently, it was never for your strength to win it in the first place. You have been ashamed of the very thing I was preparing to use. Come closer, because here is where the old fear starts to come apart. You have believed that smallness disqualifies you, that before I could do anything through you, you would first have to become larger, stronger, steadier, more impressive, more sure of yourself. So you have been trying to grow into someone big enough to deserve the rescue. And all the while I've been doing the opposite of what you expected. I have not been waiting for you to get bigger. I have been gently making room for you to stop pretending you have to be. Let me tell you about a frightened man I once called out to lead. He was hiding in a wine press, threshing a little wheat in secret so the raiders would not find it. He gathered an army to meet the enemy. I looked at that army, and I told him it was too large, not too small, too large. I told him that if a force that size won the day, every last man would march home certain that his own hand had saved him, and not one of them would ever know it was me. So I thinned them. Thousands went home, until only a few hundred were left. A number so small it must have looked like a cruel joke against the host camped in the valley. A host spread out past counting, thick as sand. Do you see what I was doing? I was not punishing him with weakness. I was clearing away everything he might have leaned on instead of me, until the only possible explanation for what happened next would be my own hand. The smallness was not the problem I needed to fix. The smallness was the whole design. It was how I made certain that when the wall of fear finally broke, no one, least of all him, could mistake it for the work of a strong enough man. And when the night came, I did not arm those few with more than they could hold. I gave each of them a trumpet and a torch, and I had them hide the torch inside a plain clay jar. Ordinary clay. The same breakable stuff you have been so afraid the whole world will see the crack in. They crept down in the dark around a camp that outnumbered them past all reckoning, and on the signal, they did the strangest thing an outnumbered handful could think to do. They did not draw a blade first. They broke the jars. They shattered the very vessels in their own hands, all at once, so the light hidden inside could leap out into the dark. Sit with that, because it is the thing I have been trying to tell you since your held breath in the dark. The breaking was not the accident. The breaking was the plan. The light could not get out until the jar was allowed to come apart. You have been guarding your crack as though it were the ruin of you. It is the opening. The fracture you were so ashamed of is the exact seam through which the light I put inside you finally escapes. A sealed jar keeps its little lamp to itself. A broken one floods the whole field. I am not asking you to manufacture a light you do not have. I set it in you long ago. I am asking you to stop spending your last strength holding shut the one opening it could shine through. You have thought of that crack as the evidence against you, the proof that you did not hold up, that something in you gave way where it should have stayed firm. So you have kept it to yourself, the way a person hides a wound they are ashamed of having taken. But a wound, hidden in the dark, can only ache. A wound brought into the light can finally do something other than hurt. I am not going to shame the place where you broke. I have never been in the business of shaming the broken places. I am telling you that the fracture you have hidden with such care is not the end of your usefulness to me. It is the beginning of it. The light needed a way out from the very start, and you have been standing guard over the only door it had. If there is a crack in you that you have kept sealed and unspoken, the place you were sure had disqualified you for good, you can name it here, wherever you are, in your own words. Not a word I hand you to repeat. The true one, the one you have been holding shut with both hands. Set it down where I can read it, and let it become the seam the light comes through instead of the flaw you spend your life hiding. Lay 2 fingers lightly at the base of your throat, where a sound would begin if you let one rise. Feel how quiet it is there right now. The held place. The note you keep swallowing back down before it can form. You do not have to make the sound yet. Just let your fingers rest on the small room where it lives, and know that even the note you have never once dared to blow is already fully known to the one who gave you the breath to blow it. You did not invent that belief, and you do not deserve the blame you keep heaping on yourself for living by it. It was pressed onto you by a time you did not choose. There may have been an early stretch when the people around you could not or would not lift their own share of the load. And it rolled downhill until it came to rest on the smallest shoulders in the house, which happened to be yours. You met it, because someone had to, and because meeting it worked. That is the quiet trap in the whole thing. The strength you improvised really did hold the roof up, so you drew the conclusion that holding the roof up was simply who you were, now and always. What began as one emergency slowly hardened into your entire way of standing, and ages after the crisis that demanded it has burned down to ash, you are still at your post in the dark, both hands locked around a strength no one ever told you that you were allowed to lay down. No relief ever came to take the watch from you. So let me be the relief. The siege lifted long ago. You are permitted at last to set the whole weight down. Consider the trumpet itself for a moment. It is the thing you have been waiting to hear. The oldest one was never a proud, straight instrument of gold. It was a ram's horn, bent, hollowed out, scraped empty of everything that once filled it, drilled clean through from end to end. It could only sound because it had first been completely emptied. A full horn makes no music at all. It had to be hollowed before it could ever be heard. You have felt hollowed by what you have walked through, scraped out and thinned in ways you never chose. I will not pretend that emptying did not hurt. But do not assume it ruined you for sound. It may be the very thing that finally made you able to carry a note. There is a line I have kept for you, and this is the moment to place it in your hands. But hear first what kind of thing it is. It is not a private whisper meant for you alone, slipped to you because you drifted near enough to overhear it. It is ancient. It rose out of the throats of people who felt every bit as outnumbered as you feel now. In a city that had learned the hard way just how small it was beside the great powers leaning on its walls. They wrote it and sang it and carried it up a hill inside their chests. And it has done its work in every frightened heart that has gripped it since. It will do that same work in yours. They had been waiting, the way you have been waiting, for some sign that their God had not forgotten which side of the valley they were standing on. And into that long waiting, a singer lifted his voice and made a claim about the very sound they had been aching to hear. This is what he wrote. Psalm 47:5. God has gone up with a shout, the Lord with the sound of a trumpet. Read it slowly, because every word of it answers the thing you have been afraid of. God has gone up, not is trying to, not might if enough of you can believe hard enough to make it happen, has gone up already ahead of you over the top of the very thing that looms so large down in your valley. And listen to what announces it. Not the roar of a great host, not 10,000 voices. The sound of a trumpet, one clear note, the smallest, simplest sound a single set of tired lungs can make. And it is the sound heaven chose to mark the moment the king took the high ground. You had been listening for something enormous before you would believe you were not alone. The sound was never going to be enormous. It was going to be a trumpet, a small, true sound, carrying the news that the victory had already gone up ahead of you. Hear what that means for the held breath you have been guarding so long. The trumpet is not the sound of you finally summoning enough strength to win. It is the sound that says the winning has already happened above your head. And all your small note has to do is agree with it. You thought you were listening for a signal to tell you the battle could still be turned. The signal is that your king has already climbed the hill. When those outnumbered few broke their jars and lifted one cracked note into the dark, they were not creating the victory with their own breath. They were falling in behind a shout that had risen before them, and the great massed noise of the enemy, the host that had seemed too many to count, did not stand and fight it. It came apart. It turned on itself in the dark and scattered, because it had never been as solid as it made itself sound. That is what I need you to understand about the thing you have been bracing against. The fear that has felt like an army camped across your valley, the voice that names you too few, too small, too cracked to matter, is far louder than it is strong. It has spent years making a great noise, precisely so you would never test how little stands behind it. And the moment the true light broke out of you and the true note was lifted, that whole host of accusation began to do what fear always does. When the light finally reaches it, it came apart. It did not have to be beaten by your strength. It only had to be exposed by my light. You were never called to outshout it. You were called to let me break the jar. Think of what that means for the prayers you let go thin. You believed they were too small to reach me. A breath, a few worn words, sometimes not even words, just a tightness in the chest lifted in my direction and then let go. You measured them against the great fluent prayers you imagined other people were praying, and yours felt like one cracked note beside a full orchestra. But I was never grading the size of the sound. A trumpet is not a choir, and I never asked it to be. One thin, true note from a person at the very end of themselves has always moved me more than 1,000 polished words, performed by someone who does not need me yet. You have not been praying too small. You have been praying the exact sound I bend down low to hear, and there is a last trumpet still ahead, one I have not let you hear yet, a sound that will ask no strength of yours at all. In a moment, quicker than an eye can blink, it will call up everything that was ever laid down as lost, and what looked finished will stand up whole. I tell you that not to rush you toward the end of things, but so you will know what kind of God stands behind the small note in your hand right now. The one who will raise the dead with a single trumpet is not going to be stopped by the size of your valley. If the final sound of all is a trumpet, then the little one you are afraid to blow is in very good company. Look back at what I said to you when this began, that the small cracked thing you keep hiding is the very place the light would finally break through. Here is why that is true. The wholeness you have been protecting was never the point. The light was the point. And I have never needed you to be a whole army, an unbroken jar, a voice loud enough to fill the valley. I needed you to let me be the shout that has already risen, and to let your one small note fall in behind it. So let me take the shame off of your smallness, because you have worn it far too long. You have believed that being few, being little, being less than the size of your trouble was proof you had been left on your own. It was proof of the opposite. I have a long habit of choosing the smaller number, the younger brother, a trembling hand, a cracked jar, a single stone against the giant, a boy's small lunch set against the hungry thousands. Not because I cannot work through strength, but because strength forgets so quickly whose it was. I keep the numbers small so the wonder stays unmistakable. If you have felt yourself thinned down to almost nothing, do not read it as abandonment. It may be the exact smallness through which I mean to be seen. You have looked at the small number of your resources, a little strength, a few allies, a thin margin, a short supply of whatever you keep wishing you had more of, and you have read it as the measure of what is possible for you. It is not. The size of what I can do through a life has never been set by the size of what that life first brought to me. 5 loaves in a child's hands, a single smooth stone against a giant twice the height of the one who threw it. 300 trembling men with lamps hidden in clay. A shepherd boy no one thought to call in from the field. I have always preferred to begin from almost nothing, so that whatever rises up afterward could only ever be explained one way. And do not miss what I put into the hands of those few, because I have given you the same 2 things, a light and a sound. That is all. Not a strategy clever enough to outthink the dark, not a strength great enough to overpower it, a light to break open, and a note to blow. You already carry both. The light is the life I set in you that no crack could ever drain away, only release. The sound is the small true voice you keep deciding is not worth the lifting. You have been waiting until you felt strong enough to use them. Strong enough was never the requirement. willing to be broken open was. There is a loneliness in feeling like the last one standing, and I want to reach into it directly. You have carried the quiet conviction that the line depends on you, that if your one small strength gives way, everything you have been holding up will fall. Hear me. You were never the line. I am the line. You are the trumpet I lifted to my own purpose, and a trumpet does not have to be strong. It only has to be willing to sound. The weight that has been crushing you is the weight of a fight you were never standing in by yourself. And I am lifting the part of it that told you it all came down to whether you, alone, were enough. And the years you spent holding that jar together were not lost. Not even the seasons that gave back so much less than you poured in. Every time you steadied your voice when it wanted to crack. Each dawn you rose and stood between the people you love and the thing that threatened them, while none of them saw the price. The moments you pushed the note back down because the room was not safe for it yet. None of that quiet faithfulness drained away into nothing. I gathered it. What a straining heart spends in secret I keep. And I keep it somewhere nothing I treasure is ever mislaid. You were not only surviving those seasons, you were being hollowed, without ever knowing it, into something that could one day carry a sound, worked slowly and unseen, into the very trumpet I am raising to my lips now. The fear will try to gather itself again. It helps to know that before it happens, so it does not undo you when it does. A scattered host can regroup in the dark and come back sounding just as many as before. When it does, you will not have to raise a larger army against it. You will do the small thing again. You will let the light out through the crack. You will lift the one true note. The fear is loud, but it has never been able to outlast the light, and it never will. However convincingly it fills the valley with noise. Its size was always a bluff. Your light was always real. Draw one breath in, and then let it out the way a long note fades, slower leaving you than it came in, all the way down until there is nothing left in your chest to hold. A held breath is what a person does who is braced to be enough on their own. A long breath let go is what a trumpet does when it finally trusts the sound to carry, without being forced. Let this one leave you like that. You are not being asked to blow harder. You are being allowed to stop holding your breath at all. Some of you keep your note low on purpose. You have blown it before and watched it seem to change nothing. And you decided it was safer to stay silent than to sound small and be passed over again. I understand the ache in that choice, but hear the difference. The times your voice seemed to fall flat, you were trying to win the battle with the sound itself. As though the volume were the power. It never was. The trumpet does not knock the wall down by being loud. It announces that the one who knocks walls down has come. You do not have to be heard above the noise. You only have to sound, and let me do with it what a handful of cracked jars once did to a valley full of fear. So let me put one small thing into your keeping to carry past these words, not a technique to master. When the old fear musters again, the valley fills up with that familiar noise. You are too few, too small. It will not work. Who are you to think you could? You will not have to argue with it or outshout it. You can do the smaller, stronger thing. You can say under your breath 4 plain words. The hill is taken. That is all. The hill is taken. You are not announcing your own strength. You are agreeing with a victory that climbed ahead of you. You may not feel the valley go quiet the first time it leaves your mouth, or the 10th, but further in, past the point where it feels like nothing is happening, you will notice you have stopped bracing to be an army. Because you finally remembered you were only ever meant to be a trumpet. There is very likely someone near you who feels just as outnumbered as you have. Someone in your house or your circle who has gone quiet because they decided their voice was too small to matter. Someone carrying a cracked jar of their own, spending everything they have to keep the fracture from showing. You cannot hand another person their courage in a lecture, but you can be the one who does not flinch when their light finally breaks out. who hears the small, shaking note they were certain no one wanted and lets them know it carried. Often the way a person learns to stop despising their own smallness is by refusing to despise someone else's. So let the old verdict go. You are not too small for your own life. You were never the wrong size. You are not the last thin line holding back the dark by the strength of your own arm. You are one cracked jar with a light inside it that I lit, and no loss could put out. You are one clear note, waiting to fall in behind a shout that has already risen over the hill. The fear that filled your valley was loud, and it was never strong. The crack you were so ashamed of was the opening all along, and the sound you kept hoping would reach you from somewhere far off has been resting this whole time in your own tired hands. Small enough to blow, true enough to scatter an army of fear, mine before you ever felt ready to lift it. Break the jar, not by force, and not by working up a strength you do not have. Simply by loosening your grip on the crack you have guarded so long, and letting the light I placed in you do the thing light does in the dark. Lift the one note you were sure was too small to matter, and listen, under it, over it, ahead of it, for the shout that rose before you were born. The sound of a king who has already taken the high ground of every valley you will ever have to walk into. You are not marching out alone. You never were. You are simply finally agreeing with the victory. You do not have to feel strong to believe this. You do not have to feel like more than you are. You only have to let yourself be broken open enough for the light to get out, and to let the small sound be enough, because the one it announces has never been small. Rest there. The valley is loud, but the hill is already taken. Amen. Before the quiet settles, one honest question, and I mean it plainly. What is the sound you have been waiting to hear from somewhere far off? The signal that would finally tell you that you are not standing against all of it alone. Name it below in your own words. I read what is left there, and if someone rose up in your mind while you listened, a person holding a cracked jar of their own, carry this to them. Their small note was always meant to carry too.